Hello, everyone. It's Mr. Kepler again, coming to you from Wednesday, April 14th. Now, for this particular day's work, looks like a lot of questions, and if you look at the questions just at face value, they're going to seem confusing, they're going to seem daunting, but hopefully these hints and some of these tricks will help you with some of the questions. Now, there are two main documents that you're going to look at for this one, starting with document A, which is a word excerpt from, if you can see, from the Dust Bowl period. And there are 5 questions attached to this particular document. Now, if you look at the first question, well, actually, to answer any of these questions, you're going to have to read the document. Plain and simple. You do that, should make these questions go much easier. If you follow these hints while you're working through this, should make this part particularly no problem. Now, question 1 says, does this document have primary source material? Now, to kind of help you with this, I attached it to, I believe, Thursday's work, but I'm going to attach it here in the description as well. The difference between a primary and a secondary source. So hopefully in your English classes, you should know what a primary and secondary source is at this point. But if you don't know, a primary source is written from some person's perspective. Like, I'm telling you something. That is from a primary source, is from that person's perspective. Now, a secondary source is the opposite of that. Secondary sources are those things you see in like reports, journals, accounts written after the fact. That would be a secondary source. Most of the stuff that we hear about in history textbooks, like this event happened because of this, it's probably a secondary source, unless it says it's coming from someone specifically. If it says this person said that, then that's probably a primary source. So to help you with one, you just need to tell me, does this document have primary source material, and tell me yes or no. If you read the document, it should be pretty easy to figure out number 1. All right. Number 2 says, what does the author mean when he says the earth ran amok? Now, if you read the document, you know what happens during the Dust Bowl. That should be pretty obvious after you read it. Amok is just another crazy word for things are going crazy. They're going pretty wild. So if you read the document about the Dust Bowl, that should be no problem to answer. Number 3, it says, what problem is shared by both people and cattle? You got to read the document, and it's in there as something that both cattle and people had to deal with because of these dust storms. Now, number 4 says, does this document do a better job describing dust storm conditions or explaining the causes behind the Dust Bowl problem? It's got 2 little things in there that you need to pay attention to. Essentially, does this document do a better job describing dust storm conditions or explaining the causes behind the Dust Bowl? Does it say specifically what caused the Dust Bowl, or does it do a better job describing the conditions that took place during the Dust Bowl? And then lastly, number 5 is a question. If you look at it, you're going to think you're going to need to write an essay. I'm going to tell you right now, you don't need to write an essay. 5 says, in a short essay titled What Caused the Dust Bowl, how might you use this document? So if you were writing an essay for a class using this document, how would you use it in an essay? So if you're going to use it as someone's firsthand account, primary source, how would you use it? And the information contained within. That's document A. That's part 1 of Wednesday's work. Part 2, when it says document B, there's 2 little things you're going to look at. There's a quote from a sheep herder, and there's actually a picture of some of the land in the areas that were affected by the Dust Bowl. You're going to use these 2 resources to kind of help you answer both of these questions. Now, there are 4 questions that are attached to document B, very similar in some cases to the document A questions, but they're going to take you to think just a little bit. So for number 1, it says, what do you suppose that the Texas sheep herder means when he says the grass saves all? So you're going to have to look at his quote and kind of know a little bit of science about what the purpose of grass is within a ecosystem. And using his quote, the grass saves all, what is he meaning by that? Especially if you're a sheep herder, his job, you can make a connection there as well. Two, when it says the sheep herder also says the grass holds the earth together. What does this mean? Now, when he's doing that, when he's talking about that, about what it means when it says hold the earth together, that's going to go back to your science. What is the purpose of grass? What does it do? When it means it holds the earth together. You're going to have to kind of make a little connection there. 3, when it says, how does this document help answer the question, what caused the Dust Bowl? Which means you're going to have to think back to previous days and know essentially what the Dust Bowl was and how, if you look at this document, if you look at part A, the first little quote from the sheep herder and the picture at the bottom, how does this document help answer the question, what caused the Dust Bowl? Is there something missing? Something along those lines. And then lastly, for number 4, it says the visual above is a typical view of the grass described by Stuart Chase. What is likely to happen once this grass is removed to plant crops? So that's tying back into pretty much all the other questions you've answered. And if you've come to this point by now, pretty much it should be pretty easy to answer this particular question. What would happen once the grass leaves? Eventually leads to something. So if you use these hopeful hints, hopefully they have helped. If you have any further questions, let me know. Send me a message, and I will try to get to you as quick as I can. So I will see you on Thursday.